So that whole itchy, scratchy thing from Resident Evil, for those of you that are familiar with Resident Evil, it's taken to whole new, just really disturbing levels here. Titane, or Titane as I've heard some people pronounce it. I don't know, it's French and in English it means titanium, so I'm going with Titane. It's brought to us by director Julia Dacarano and stars Agatha Razel and Vincent Linden. So Titane has been billed as kind of a Cronenberg-esque body horror flick. And in some ways it is. There is definitely body horror in this movie, and much of it is pretty fucking disturbing. I'll never look at someone scratching their belly the same way again. But that's not all this movie is. In fact, the vast majority of this movie and the most interesting parts of this movie aren't about that at all. Now, the weirdest parts of the movie are definitely about that, but the actual interesting parts, the actual story itself, doesn't really have a lot to do with that. In fact, this story is a lot deeper than you think at first. It's a bit difficult to explain without giving things away, but essentially we have two characters that come from two very different lifestyles that come together because of some odd circumstances. Both have their demons and their issues, and through this unlikely coupling of these two, they find retribution, love, and purpose, but also find that one cannot get away from the consequences of their actions. It's also about grief, facing that grief, and what we as people are willing to do to sedate that grief. And as you'll see in this movie, people, or at least the people in this movie, are willing to do a whole lot. A whole lot. Now, there's some really weird ass shit that happens in this movie, and for about the first third of the movie, you're wondering, what the fuck am I watching? But after that part, things do start to kind of balance out a bit. That's when we get into the main crux of the story, and things stop being as weird as they were earlier. Don't worry though, because they still pepper in plenty of weird shit throughout the entire movie. And this is the part of the movie that I found really fascinating and interesting, because I just was not expecting the movie to go the direction that it went. This story that develops throughout this film truly was fascinating. I really just liked watching these characters and seeing where they were gonna go. And while there is some really weird and out there shit that does happen throughout the film, the vast majority of it is pretty straightforward. I mean, straightforward in like a grounded kind of way. The story itself is very complex and not straightforward at all, but that doesn't mean it's difficult to understand, or at least for the most part. I loved how the movie dealt with retribution, grief, consequences, and all these things. Like, all this stuff is in this one story, and it's really interesting. This odd journey that our characters Alexia and Vincent go on is a treat to watch, and one of the things that kept me interested was the fantastic performances from our leads. They're great, although they are at times very French. And I by no means mean that's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's a different culture, so some other cultures, other than the French, might look at it and think some of the actions are a bit odd. So, you know, French. The movie's also got some very convincing effects. They all look great, but the thing that really stood out to me in the technical department was the sound design. This is some fantastic, yet pretty damn nasty at times sound design. In a lot of these weird scenes that I was talking about, some of the most horrifying things are the sound design. The way that they made things sound just made your skin crawl at times. Ugh, just stop scratching it! Alright, so speaking of the weird streak that this movie has running through it, there's an odd occurrence that is going on throughout this film that starts in the beginning and runs all the way to its conclusion. And many of the things that concern this occurrence or situation that's going on throughout this film are what lean into that body horror aspect of the movie. And yes, it is very disturbing at times. There are scenes in this movie that are pretty tough to watch. And for the vast majority of the film, if really not the entire film, you'll be wondering when these scenes pop up and this whole situation that's going on, what in the actual fuck is happening here? Now, by the time you get to the end, there are a multitude of ways you can view this situation, but honestly, I think a lot of people are just gonna kind of be lost. And that's because the ending of this movie will leave you with a whole lot of questions. Like I said a bit ago, there are things that happen in this movie that you're not really sure if they are real or not. And when you get to the end, you kind of get an answer to that, but then due to this answer, you have so many more questions, and you're just not gonna get them. While yes, there is a level of ambiguity to it all, it's not even so much that. You just don't get answered. It's all left up to you. You gotta come up with those answers yourself, and some people just don't like movies like that. And if that's you, just be prepared. While I did really enjoy this movie, by the time you get to the end, you're gonna end up with a whole bunch of questions. Guys, Titane is a really interesting yet very weird movie. Saying that it's not gonna be for everyone is a bit of an understatement. That being said, the main storyline of the film isn't quite as weird as you would initially be led to believe. It's definitely a bit odd, but it is much more grounded than you're initially thinking. I thought its exploration of all the different themes going on in the film was really well done, and it really gets you to thinking, and that's always a good thing when it comes to film. This is a movie that after you watch it, you're gonna want to talk about it. If nothing else, you're gonna want to talk to somebody about what the fuck was that in the end. And while it is pretty weird and the story is a bit unconventional, it was still a really entertaining, very interesting film. And for me, it was absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
If nothing else, after watching this movie, I guarantee you will be thinking about it for days. So if you're looking for a thought-provoking little movie that'll get the gears turning and are okay with some pretty raunchy scenes and body horror to a degree, then check out Titane one night, and I think, if nothing else, you're gonna have a very interesting time and a whole lot of questions. So there it is, guys, my review of Titane. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below. Become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys. And possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Paris.
Her voice was soft and cool, her eyes were clear and bright, but she's not there.
So I may have mentioned a couple of times that this movie is a bit weird, and to give you a little bit of perspective on that without ruining too much, I'll tell you about something that happens a bit closer to the beginning of the movie. I won't go into great detail, but essentially there's a person in this movie that fucks a car. Yeah, you heard me right. This person fucks a car, or at least that's what we're led to believe. And due to some of the events that happen later in the film, this person may or may not have copulated with a motor vehicle. Look, I told you it was weird, and I don't really know how much more weird you could get than somebody fucking a car. Where's the G-spot on a Cadillac anyway? Probably right next to the OnStar button.